So, welcome if you're just joining us. We're diving into the conversation, very informal. If you have a question, there are so few of us, we can just shout it out. So, okay. So, this is really an alphabet soup of things that are going on, and maybe you've heard of these acronyms before: DERs, BPPs, and GETs, and why this all matters. So, distributed energy resources are things like rooftop solar and storage, maybe solar on parking lots, smaller scale little microgrids, batteries on walls, batteries on wheels, and other things like like water heaters and smart thermostats can act as batteries. And we'll be talking more about that as we go along. And then if you link all of those things up and you add a bunch of software and you add demand response, which is asking people to reshape their demand patterns, then you have a virtual power plant. I will say that some among us, including our own policy analysts at 350 Bay Area, don't love the name virtual power plant. They like to call them distributed power plants. But train has left the station, guys. This is how people are talking about them as virtual power plants. And I think that is a way to say this is really a software game for a bunch of resources that exist already or are coming online very quickly. So GATS, probably not a lot of people talk about this in regular cocktail party conversations, but those are grid enhancing technologies. And those are also key to safely, affordably, and quickly increasing grid capacity. And they're here right now. They're in use. They're not being as adopted as quickly as they should be. And we will be talking about that. So embracing all these different things really does lead to a faster shift to clean energy, which is why we're here and why we care. And the faster that shift is, the cleaner the air is in general, but also in the impacted neighborhoods near particularly peaker plants or gas-fired power plants, which we still do a lot of in California. And it's really the fastest, cleanest, and probably the cheapest route to meeting this burgeoning new energy demand that everybody's talking about. So new demand from shifting away from fossil fuels to electricity and electric driven systems, a new demand from AI and data centers. So also DERs are sort of by definition really local, and they are affected by local control. They provide local resilience and local jobs. So we kind of love that. But it's also really cool to see this all coming together finally. Like, I don't know, it's been 20 or 30 years. We've been talking about the Internet of Things and how everything was going to change and everything was going to be linked. And this is where it makes the most sense to apply that kind of technology and ambition. So I'm kind of excited. All right, so you all know that the grid is changing, and the underlying fundamentals are changing as well. So this is already happening. The system is going from a big power generation one way to a more complex distributed system where power can flow two ways, which is very complicated. But these kinds of distributed systems are by definition more resilient. And this is again the faster path to a clean grid. And when you have local generation powering local energy use, that takes a lot of wear off of the transmission and distribution infrastructure. And the industry typically calls them T&D. So that's transmission and distribution. And got a little weigh in from the cat action over here. Anyway, so just another little focus on what the advantages are to having a bunch of batteries in the system. So they really come online faster than traditional resources. So when it comes to dispatching power, it's milliseconds potentially, as opposed to the time that it takes to spool up, predict and then spool up and match a gas-fired peaker plant or something like that. So that provides other grid benefits like frequency regulation and voltage support. And those are super important because if those get out of whack, it's like a wobbly tire that can throw everything off, and it can shut down big chunks of the grid, and it can burn out motors. So it can, if you're, our systems in all of our electric devices really depend on clean power. And so if you get it wrong, you can burn out people's stuff, which makes them mad. So anyway, so faster, cheaper, better than peakers. We still are going to need utility scale projects. There is no doubt about it. But we absolutely also desperately need this kind of distributed approach. All right. So the grid, to a large extent, is really built for 3 to 5 days a year. So we have this huge excess demand. And you've heard me already say peaker plants are bad, because peaker plants are bad. And that's only about 5% of that excess capacity. So we've got like pretty decent a bunch of capacity already built that we're just not able to take advantage of. And this is just the kind of the average path of a typical day in California. And you can see until 2023. So these different lines are the way that the load demand patterns looked. And you see the big fat line is 2023. And this is called the duck curve because it looks like a duck. And the belly of the duck is because of solar power coming online. Like, look how much solar power came online for 2015. Like, yay, us. This is very good. But it also means that managing the loads and the demand is a little bit more complicated than they used to be. So that's already here. The complexity is here. We're going to have to deal with it. It's how we deal with the complexity. So it comes to matching supply with the demand and decapitating the duck. Like we just have to smooth this out. And if you can see, like right here, the demand goes below zero, and that that makes people very frustrated. In the system operators, that haven't adapted to this new reality. Because I'll tell you something, a little bit of curtailed cheap energy is better than climate change, basically. So, and then as batteries get cheaper and cheaper, we have ways to suck up that excess power and then lop off these peaks. So um, the I just leave a couple of notes about rooftop solar, just to sort of emphasize that a lot of this reduction in demand during the middle of the day is because of rooftop solar that other people paid for to stick on their roofs, and it really took a lot of demand off of the grid and saved everybody money because local supply straight to household um, uses plus some energy going back to the grid reduces the strain on transmission lines in particular. So anyway, so now you know about the duct curve. Okay, so the VPP, the virtual power plant, then coordinates the generation, storage, and demand patterns in a distributed way using all of these nodes on this complicated network. So this reduces those peaks and increases overall utilization so that we don't need to build more stuff. We're just going to use better the stuff that we have. Again, the linked batteries can provide power quickly. And just as a little bit of a cul-de-sac here, when we're talking about asking people to give power back to the grid from their wall batteries and their EV batteries, we're talking about not draining those batteries, but taking like 10 to 15% of the stored power to put back to the grid during the peak times. And the owners of those EV or wall batteries set the parameters for how that works. So some people get really terrified when they think, oh, a utility is going to come and steal all the power from my car. And it's like, well, no, you set the parameters. You can even set it up so that if on day X, you don't want to contribute to any battery storage to the utility, you can just say no. You can do that. So this is where we can say household systems act as batteries as well. So smart thermostats control heat pump HVAC systems can pre-cool and preheat spaces. So basically the indoor air of your house can act like a battery so that your house is pre-cooled during when they have all that excess solar power in the middle of the day, and then it sort of just rides through that peak period using no energy whatsoever, ideally, and then can go back once the peak is over, so that that smooths the demand patterns. And same with smart water heaters. So the super efficient heat pump water heaters, the same deal. Those tend to be more expensive for a lot of different reasons, but part of that is that they need to have temperature controls so that they don't release scalding water directly, because they've got to mix it so that if they preheat the water, it can be too hot for use in the household. And that's what they call it. Whoops. Also, behavioral changes. And I think probably everybody on this call has gotten a Flex alert and just been simply very low techily asked, please don't use power tonight between these things, because the entire grid will go down and it'll be all your fault. So very, very low tech, just reaching out. But is anybody here using Ohm Connect? That's another, yeah, Kate?
I used to use it, got very frustrated with it, but now Sonoma Clean Power is doing something very similar without the punitive parts of Home Connect.
Yeah, I signed up for Own Connect right away because they were supposed to have it so that I could have all my reward points or whatever go to Thrifty Bay Area. But again, it was like, well, this is complicated. But it was just a way for me to know when the grid was getting impacted. So I mostly just ignored it. And then I switched it to something else when somebody else asked me to do it. Oh, it's the my inverter for my solar panel. They have now a program where they just want to take control of it. So anyway, and that's kind of part of the VPP thing, depending on how it's used. But again, it's all about using technology to flatten out demand and use the stored energy from solar to power through those peak periods. All right. So, and then there are other programs that sort of take control without your direct involvement. I talked about the smart thermostats where somebody else kind of controls it within the parameters that you set. Um, but there's other ones that you do the same thing with, like EV charging. So probably everybody here with an EV has programmed their car or their charger to only charge in the middle of the night. So anyway, I do like to keep saying these are all like opt-inable and flexible and like customer control. Okay. So here's some examples. We've talked Ohm Connect to death, and thank you, Kate, for bringing up the CCA programs. The Flex alerts are funny, but useful. They save the grid a couple times, during those few hours where the whole grid is just like shaking in fear. But also wanted to note, major industrial users have been on programs like these for decades. The utility, as they set them up, are like, hey, we can pay you a lot of money if you don't use power when we call you. And I think sometimes it's literally a phone call, at least it used to be. So, to a certain extent, this has been sort of tested out in the world and obviously been successful, especially recently. But if any of you know Dave Roberts Volts, he did an episode on the NRG energy program with Renew Home to create a 1 gigawatt virtual power plant, just linking together existing smart thermostats to again reduce the peaks. Super fun. You would be surprised that Dave and the guy from Renew Home could talk about this for an hour, but they do, and it's great, and it gives you a really robust way of thinking about it. So I put the link in the slide here. And then LEAP and the National Grid in Massachusetts is doing something similar with office buildings. So they're just focusing on bigger users, but they're including more types of nodes like smart thermostats, EV chargers, and HVAC systems. I don't know why they list the HVAC systems separately from the smart thermostats, because the one drives the other, but that's the way they're talking about it. So I didn't want to understand what that was about. Okay, and right here in our backyard, Ava's VPP initiative using Lunar Energy's grid share, for those of you who are keeping track. Just launched phase one, where they're going to enroll 5,000 people and their chargers, their EVs and their chargers. The first year, another 5,000. The second year, not a huge chunk of the 144,000 EVs in the service area. So we'll see how that goes. And the goal is to reduce cost without impacting the customer. So all behind the scenes. So they'll just take charge, and the EV owners will say, I need my car charged to this percent by this time. And then within that parameter, then the utility can do whatever they want as long as the car comes out with that charge at that time. And the incentives up to $100 per year. Okay, guys, really? I mean, we got to fix this incentive thing, because that is, who cares? I'm sorry. it just it just seems like $100 a year is pretty chintzy. And Ava has been working since 2020 with Sunrun and their program that they have a VPP that links up their wall batteries and the power to the grid during peak periods. And I don't know what the incentives are, but I'm always stunned by how low they are. So this is basically the opposite of the first adopters, where first adopters in other technology are willing to pay more. The first adopters in this program are willing to be good guys and just, like, see how it goes. And $100 is not nothing still. Okay. What are the potential downsides? Somebody asked me about this. And my thinking was, look, the complexity is here anyway. Do we deal with it or do we ignore it? And it seems like dealing with it is better. However, this is a complex and data intensive project or a process. And it depends on software to manage all of this stuff. And there's a certain amount of exposure when we have big corporations managing big software that has control over a huge aspect of our lives. So yeah, but that's the bad guy oligarch downside, which we're already facing with IOUs. There's certain privacy issues. I think that they're manageable. Like, if you're really concerned about that, guess what? You don't have to do any of this stuff. You can just say no. And then issues of individual control. But every one of these programs that I've seen gives people a lot of control, because it's software. Giving them control costs nothing. So we'll see. There's another, well, I recommend listening to all of Dave Roberts' podcasts, and he has a whole program about how software suppliers can go rogue and bad and make things worse. Okay, switching from VPPs, we're now going to talk about the grid enhancing technologies. And I chose this unsplash photo on purpose. So here are big transmission lines. Here's two parallel lines. Trees, no trees, trees. So to, put this on high Sierra mountains and just think about the bulldozer activity that has to just plow through remote areas to set up these transmission lines. So we need them, but is this going to be like a super highway? We would like 6 lanes of transmission lines? We don't have to do that. There are other ways to increase capacity, like reconductoring. So the actual literal lines that run through these poles are called conductors in this business. And there is technology available today that's been implemented, in several places, has a slightly different technology using carbon, I don't remember. Different technology, can double capacity, partly because the materials don't sag as much during hot weather. You don't want a saggy line, it blows around, and that's what starts forest fires. So these are safer and can up to double capacity, meaning for one of these towers, you replace the lines, it's like these two. So this is, I don't know, this is like the most obvious solution if you really do care about cost that one can imagine, and it's proven technology. And then now we're getting a little bit into the weeds, but there's a whole bunch of other line monitoring plus software systems. and that add up to things like dynamic line rating approaches. So they're constantly monitoring the line and and where the traffic's going, and they just move the traffic when a line gets so congested that it starts heating up. Does that make sense? Everybody knows electricity makes things hot, right? So it's just, again, it's about, you know, equipment on the lines, not putting them underground. So constantly managing what's literally going on the line minute by minute instead of based on projections and conjecture, just seeing what's going on can increase the grid capacity by 10 to 30%. So even with old saggy lines, you can increase grid capacity significantly, not at no cost. You've got to make sure you have all these things in place. And these also mean that it's safer because you can identify, when you're monitoring the lines as closely, you can identify problems much faster and send the helicopters out to put out the fire. Then there's also this concept of distributed intelligence, like moving intelligence throughout the whole system with smart inverters, smart capacitors, and smarter monitoring systems. And if you want to know more about this, Google is your friend. Because I know you're all dying to type in dynamic line rating. All right. So why do IOUs block projects? This is not a difficult story to understand. They make money by building transmission and distribution lines. They make a boatload of money by building transmission and distribution lines. Like, what the heck? So even when interest rates were dipping below zero, they were still making 8 to 10% profit off of building these lines. And this makes no sense because this is a pretty low risk kind of investment. So when corporate bonds were earning maybe 3%, they were still raking money in because of the cozy relationships with the PUC. So even the PUC acknowledges that the current business model pushes the utilities to spend more than necessary. They still are rubber stamping the spending that leads to higher profits and higher rates. So this is one of the reasons that 350 Bay Area has an energy equity campaign, because this for-profit business model for public utilities is just not working. And look at this. Profits are going nuts, right? We don't need record profits. We need affordable energy. All right. So here's kind of a PG&E's spending on transmission and distribution. So, and it aligns almost perfectly with the rate increases. And that doesn't even include how much we spend providing, profits and high salaries for the executives. So this is a Solar Rights Alliance chart, and they generously ask people to use their stuff all the time, but we just wanted to credit that. Okay, so do you have any questions or comments or super enthusiasm about some of these fun technologies? Oh, Gene, the no, demand goes down at night. So the duck, it goes way down and then it comes back up again. Jody.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it is so fun to also actually be able to afford some of this, and play with it. I just got a non-exporting additional solar system, second system on my house, and so that is really cool. I'm hardly ever using the grid now, and I signed up for Tesla's VPP. So yeah, it's really it's fun to learn about it, and then it's fun to be able to actually play in the field if you're privileged enough to do that, which I am at the moment. So
Do you get
yeah, it's
any
good fun.
compensation from Tesla for the?
They say you get, that you can get up to, I don't know what it says, something like $350 a year for each power wall. And I have two. I don't know how they actually calculate it though, because twice I've had an event and it didn't look like they took any power, but it was from 9 to 11. So I'm not sure, because I wasn't monitoring it closely, but we'll see, in the end how it plays out. But anyway, it is really interesting stuff to learn about. And unfortunately, I just also got a call for a friend in need. So I'm going to jump off in a little bit, but
Nice to
thank
see
you
you.
for doing this, Laura. And I'm going to stay on a few more minutes, but yeah, it's very interesting stuff. And for me, it soaks in a little deeper each time I get, the whole picture. You get, oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So I need that.
So the model really comes together when you have a VPP company that knocks on doors and says, hey, we'll give you a wall battery if you give me access to it. Bing, bang, boom. So, and if, in that scenario, you really don't even need the solar, right? So I think that we're getting close to that, but that's why I think that $100, you can make $100 a year. Like, okay. No. But, and anything that moves you towards being able to afford these kinds of systems in your home, or help you buy an EV. So I did ask somebody in preparation for this, if anybody really is monitoring this. Hey, yes, we're being recorded, just by the way. The cars that didn't come with the ability with bidirectional charging, they should be able to be retrofit, because it's a software upgrade in the car. Okay, that is from somebody who maybe wasn't an expert, but I was just kind of poking around, go, well, if you have a car that didn't start out that way, are there ways to get there? So the answer is maybe. And the total storage available in EVs in California completely swamps all of the wall batteries. Like, it's huge. It's just, there's a lot of battery storage in your car. And my brain doesn't remember numbers, or I'd be like, it's 5 times. I don't remember what it is, but it's a lot. There's a lot of battery storage rolling around. And immediate case is we can incentivize people to charge their cars in the middle of the day when there's excess power. I mean, that's a kind of a backwards flex alert. This is plug in your car and get cheap electricity. So we haven't quite fixed our time of use rates to really match up to the reality of solar floods, solar energy flood. Valerie, hi. Anybody else? My enthusiasm is contagious, I know.
I just want to echo what Jody said, that this is the whole business of utilities is extremely complex. And so hearing it over and over again, it's like, okay, each time, okay, I retained 10% of that, and now we do it again, it's like, oh, wow, now I understand 20% of it. So I
The
appreciate
only
your
way to learn this stuff.
mhm,
And
mhm.
that's why there's a lot of overlap between these different trainings.
Yeah.
Hi, Mary Ruth. Did you have a question?
No, I just decided to show my face.
Oh, good. Well, good.
Well, I actually do have a question, and yeah, it's not a question that you'll have an answer to, but I think I've been planning to have a long conversation with MCE, because they had some program, unfortunately it was 2024, when I was kind of on the disabled list and could not pay attention to much except the things I'd already signed up for. So, I have a backup battery, I have an EV, I have 2 sets of solar panels, and I think I would love to participate in something like this. I think I have to go, and I'm on the green power, the community choice. And I got something from PG&E that said, "Oh, your your rate is changing, your my time of use." So anyway, I guess it's just a comment. I have to.
call your CCA.
Hmm?
Call your CCA.
Yes, yes, that's what's in the back of my mind when I went to the PG&E website, because they were the ones that sent me that notice, and I'm going, no information here. So I will call my CCA.
Are you in Ava?
No, it's MCE.
Oh, you're MCE. Okay. They're doing cool stuff too. I just can't remember what it is.
Yeah, I know that I got some notice from them when I was laid up, but don't remember what exactly it was.
Yeah, so I've gotten notices from Sonoma Clean Power, Solar Edge, which is the inverter or, you know, all of that technology for my solar thing, my solar and battery. PG&E, although they weren't serious, and then Home Connect, you know, like, so it seems like the having all that complexity smack ratepayers in the face. That's not good. We gotta get on top of this, and we can. We just have to figure it out. So.
Yeah.
But we, you know, luckily 350 Bay Area can be part of sorting that out and helping people understand it. So whatever you find out from MCE, Mary, let us know. We can pass it along. All right. Well, I'm glad y'all showed up. And thank you for not, we get people get very, very mad when we talk about bi-directional charging because they're convinced it's going to wreck their cars. So thank you for bearing.
Thank you, Laura,
Thank you so much.
for making it interesting.
Was it? Oh, good.
Oh, fascinating. Yes.
Because
Oh.
this is not a topic that would normally, well, unless you're really into this. So thank you.
All right, good. Okay, good.
I have to watch the recording though. I didn't absorb all of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's why we do it.
yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Luckily it's short. Okay, dears. Good to see everybody.